Welcome, everyone, to today's show. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host and producer. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about the purpose of family drama. This is part 3 of part 4. Now, you're going to hear in this episode that it's part 3 of 3. Back in 2015, when I recorded these episodes with Lynne Forrest, we actually did them all in one take. So my original plan was to get 3 episodes in at one time. However, after I had her on the show, I came back to her and asked her to do another show, a 4th show on betrayal. And I wanted her point of view, opinion, and to use the reality formula on that understanding. So today is part 3 of the new part 4. And it is Lynne Forrest. Again, if you haven't heard the first 2 parts, I would recommend stopping this recording and going back and downloading the first 2. They are in sequential order as of the recording of this show. And so if you're new to my show and have never heard these before, please go back and start with the victim triangle. And then you can move to the 3 faces of victim. And then today is the purpose of family drama. So a couple of announcements. If you've never heard me talk about a rampage of appreciation in Law of Attraction, it's a very powerful tool. One of the things that we do in our Inner Circle membership at the end of every live group coaching call once a month is we all go around and do a rampage of appreciation. And it's an amazing momentum creator. If you've never done it before, I'm doing a session on Clubhouse for free this coming Wednesday, February 10th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Clubhouse is a new app only for iPad and iPhone users. So unfortunately, if you have an Android, that won't work. But I'm sure in the future, they will make it available to all. So in the meantime, if you're on Clubhouse, find me. And if you want to join this Rampage of Appreciation call that we're doing, it is Wednesday, February 10th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And it should go on for about an hour. Now, if you're also on Clubhouse and you know that I have a show called Something to Whine About, we're also doing a happy hour on Tuesday, today, February 9th. I believe it's at 6 p.m. Pacific time. It is listed in the events. So if you follow me and you look at the events, you'll see that we're doing, it's Doug and Michael and Jay Fazette, and we've invited a couple other people to join us, but we'd love to just chat with you and have a little bit of a happy hour. It's a totally fun thing. And again, if you're on Clubhouse, come and follow me and get involved. I actually started a Law of Attraction and Manifestation club, so you can join that club also. So you can host your own rooms if you want to with other like-minded people. Now, speaking of Law of Attraction and Rampage of Appreciation and the Inner Circle membership, just another announcement that the price will go up in March, on March 1st. It is currently $9.99 a month, and you get a lot of things. In fact, I've just implemented a monthly meditation. So if you want to have a new meditation once a month, along with the live group coaching call, you get 2 to 4 podcast episodes in the Inner Circle member podcast, as well as the Facebook group where we do all kinds of things. Again, it's a lot of stuff, a lot of support that's available to you for currently $9.99. And if you want to reserve and get grandfathered in at that price, you do need to sign up before March 1st. And then it goes up to $14.99. I've been announcing the last couple of weeks that I have the Empowerment Strategist Beta certification course that I'm doing. And I will tell you that I've only got about 1 or 2 slots left. So if you're thinking about it and you're on the fence, now's the time. Because by the time this airs, I may only have 1 slot left. I probably will not be announcing it again until the end of the year when I'm going to reopen the certification at a little higher rate and with a little bit more clarity on exactly how it flows best. So again, if you've ever thought about doing what I do and you want to work within my organization, not for me particularly, but work with the tools that I use and the way that I do it, we are doing an Empowerment Strategist Beta certification course where I will work with 6 people to really flush out the details and get in there and do the work. So that is jjflazanes.com/cert, CERT, like certification, if you're interested. Also, I didn't give you the link for the Inner Circle membership. It's jjflazanes.com/inner circle. Also, the next free 30-day manifestation challenge will be happening in March. So also on March 1st in the manifestation challenge group, and that group is free. You can sign up if you haven't already. If you're already in the group, you don't need to do anything. If you would like to join the group and participate and use the tools that I provide for you and get the support during those 30 days to do the practices that you know would benefit you to get you more in alignment, to increase your frequency, and to increase your ability to receive, go to jjflizanes.com/30day. That's 30DAY to register for the next 30-day manifestation challenge. I will also tell you, because most of it happens on Facebook, when you register, there'll be questions you need to answer as you register. And please give us the exact email address that you used to register. I have to be able to verify in my system that you have entered your email address and that you're the right person who's requesting in the group. I protect this group. I do not promote it anywhere else. And everyone in it either listens to the show or has listened to the show at one point in time and likes to participate and support this kind of law of attraction exercise and community. So again, that's jjflizanes.com/30day. All the links I've mentioned will be in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and also share it. I want you to use it for yourself, to be self-reflective, to figure out your role. And sometimes people don't want you to tell them that they're being a victim. However, if you know anyone who's searching for answers within their own family or situation or environment or work relationships, and you think this would be helpful, I definitely invite you to share this episode, as well as any of the episodes I've ever done, with the people who you think are ready to receive it. Enjoy today's show. We have back for the third show, Lynne Forrest. Lynne Forrest is a reality guide and personal growth mentor. Lynne was educated through a lifetime of studying and observing metaphysical life principles taught to her early in life and learning how to apply those principles to her own life in positive ways. She's been sharing her findings with others and watching their lives transform since the 70s and has supported herself and her family through a private practice which was founded on those principles in 1985. Lynne came up through the ranks of experiential learning rather than the more traditional academic route. She started out in the mental health field in the early 70s, hired and trained by an HMO in social work and mental health. She's been in the field of personal growth ever since. Moving to the addictions field in the early 80s, where she was one of the pioneers for codependency and family of origin work in Chattanooga, Tennessee. As a perpetual student of life and consciousness, Lynne has devoted her career to studying with the masters of various disciplines: family dynamics, Jungian principles, dreams and shadow work, psychodrama and energy, as well as the laws of manifestation, body-oriented practices such as yoga, physical unwinding, and qigong are just some of the approaches Lynne applies to her work with others. Welcome back, Lynne.
Thank you, JJ.
So today we're talking about healing your patterns from childhood and family. And if you're just joining us for the first time, this is the third show, and they are in sequential order, but you won't necessarily need to go back and listen to all three. However, I will highly recommend that you go back and listen to all three. So we're working with patterns of behavior from birth, learned patterns, and with the idea of the victim triangle or the drama triangle and where we're operating from in terms of our belief systems and how we're showing up in life, and if we're stuck, if we're conscious or we're unconscious. So, Lynne, let's start with the question of, when do core beliefs form?
By the age of 5, we have a core belief theme in place. So those first, and frankly, now, through epigenetics, we have, since it's been established through epigenetics, that genes actually change in the moment, and therefore the DNA is constantly changing. And we actually inherit our beliefs lineage, our belief system through our DNA. So we'll actually inherit the core beliefs of our family lineage at birth. We'll come into that setup. And that, to me, is not a hopeless thing at all. What that tells me is that it's by design. It's built into our very structure that we are here to experience a particular core beliefs and to flesh them out so that we can better see them. I like to think that we as souls say yes to making this courageous journey to boot camp Earth, because it is boot camp here. You will notice, look around at the way every thought that has ever been thought or believed is made concrete, fleshed out in form here on this planet. And that is what this planet is about. And when we begin to understand that, we find a lot less resistance to it than to align with those same reality principles that create the belief system we carry, to co-create the world that we want instead. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's...
Well, absolutely. So how do we know then if we're acting out of a core belief, or is it just a genuine reaction? How do we make the distinction?
Well, if it sets up resistance in us, if we find ourselves wanting to argue, defend, prove them wrong, prove ourselves right, compete, if we find ourselves any what I call low frequency feeling gives us an alert that we're on the victim triangle in victim consciousness, which is a state of mind that is predominated by blame, and that looks at the outside world and says, that's out there is what's causing me to feel bad. And therefore, and this is where this is what control is really about, JJ, is all control is based on the belief that something out there is making me unhappy. And so, of course, what I need to do is take control of that thing out there and make it stop doing that. Make it stop hurting me. And this is what we're basically what we're doing. We're walking around in life trying to get the world to stop hurting us, not understanding that the world is not hurting us. It's not acting upon us at all. It's simply reflecting to us, literally reflecting to us, like a mirror reflects to us, the systems that we are operating out of in our own minds. And that's its purpose. So we have this belief system we come into life with, and by the age of 5, it is firmly in place, and then we spend the rest of our life proving it out unless or until life intervenes, until consciousness intervenes, until something happens that intervenes on that old pattern and causes us to begin to question it. And that's what we call awakening.
All right, let's talk about that concept of awakening and that idea, because I know for me, when I look back at what has happened, things I've contributed to, the state of consciousness of certain people, because it sounds like obviously our core beliefs start very, very early. And then at some point we have that awakening. But does awakening absolutely happen? I mean, I see people who are not young, who are not awake, in my opinion, that they keep operating out of what we've been talking about for the last 3 shows about being a victim or being a persecutor. These belief systems rule their life and their decisions and their relationships. So is it part of our human journey that everyone awakens, or do some people not become awake?
The law says we get to choose. The universal law says we have free will. And we can choose to believe. And what that means, the one thing we really, really have free will over is whether or not to believe what we think. And we always are given that choice. The universe will never intervene on that. It's always waiting for us to choose the moment of our awakening. And number one. And number two, sometimes people have awakened, or let's just say that there's a way of looking at it, the Eastern way, that suggests that every soul upon leaving, because of course they believe in reincarnation and that kind of thing. I don't know. I just know we're eternal beings. I figure with 400 billion galaxies out there, there's other places to go and do and see. And we're eternal beings because we're energetic. And energy never dies. It changes form, but it never dies. And so we are of that. We're made of that energetic essence that is eternal. And so the Easterners believe in an incarnation that depending on the sort of the belief system that you exit on, the frequency of vibration that creates for you, that energetic transmission will be what carries you into family. Freak accident that you land in the family you do. We all end up exactly in the family that we came to experience. And I know this is hard for us because those of us who have difficult family lives, and they are the ones who are planted in our back pocket, so close to us that because they love us so much, they're willing to open their mouths and say the things that we, on some level, are afraid are true anyway. And that's why it creates such a resistance in us. Because anytime we have a resistance, anytime we have a low frequency response to someone's behavior or something they say to us or something they tell us, or anytime we resist them, we know that we have just spotted exactly what it is that we're out of harmony, where it is we're out of harmony within our own mind. And that's their purpose. Their purpose is not to agree with us, nod their head, and be our number one fan club. Their purpose is to help us recognize, initiate us, the parents that we have who are abusers and that kind of thing. It's like that's the path we came to move through. How do we know that? Because it's where we are. And only if you accept the understanding that there are no coincidences, there is no mistake, and that what we encounter is an energetic match for us, whether we like it or not. It's not ours to debate whether or not we're supposed to have it, because we wouldn't be having it if it weren't meant to be, if it weren't part of our makeup dynamic. It's just a matter of, do I choose to believe that same old story, or am I choosing to line up with reality? And moment to moment. So awakening is the choice to align with reality, with the way things are, with the understanding of the universe that sees a benevolent world, that sees a world working with me to awaken me, not a world that's out to get me. That is a story about the world.
Let's talk about that dynamic, though, of that the difference between someone who has chosen to see it as an observer, see it as divine choice. I don't know if you know the work of Carolyn Mace, but I'm a big fan of Carolyn's work and of the idea that we choose our families and we choose all parts of our life, really, before we ever incarnate into physical form when we get here. So I'm one with you there, and I do believe in incarnation. So that we're energy and matter energy can't be destroyed, and that we're just physical or non-physical, and sometimes we're both. So with that said, let's take the family dynamic of someone who's choosing to step back and see sort of the inner workings and the higher purpose of it all, and use that observer practice and use that, what would you call it? Observer mindset?
I call it observer consciousness.
Okay, so using the observer consciousness, but then you have a whole slew of people who are stuck on the victim triangle as victims. Let's talk about that dynamic, because for myself as well as others that might be listening, that is it just about the acceptance for the observer to understand that progression in the dynamic in order to sort of accept, heal, and vibrate at a frequency that is more loving, more open, more conscious, more aware?
There's no way of protesting victim consciousness that is not on the victim triangle. There is no way to fight it and not end up in it. You cannot resist it and win. There's only one way to make peace with victim consciousness, and that is to recognize it as what is for us, for the opportunity to refine us. So those people around us who don't appear to have awakened, who are very much dancing the dance on the triangle, are there for our learning purposes. Everyone's a teacher. Everyone we encounter either teaches us through inspiration, they inspire us to want to model after them, or they inspire us through contrast. They show us what we don't want. And both are viable teachers, and sometimes those who show us through contrast, they bring that emotional response that really, really highly intensifies the desire in us not to go that route and to seek other ways. They are very often the ones who set us on a seeker's path. And so you see, their role is sacred. And just because we don't recognize them, we want to judge them as sick, as dysfunctional, as these are all labels, these are all stories we have about them, rather than recognizing the service they render. And the second, we don't know, for instance, if you believe in reincarnation, you don't know, for instance, that particular thorn in your side of a mother, father, brother, sister, husband is not exactly the opposite, an angel in disguise, someone who has come to reflect the places where you're in dissonance, where you are in disharmony with yourself. I've yet to find, and pointing the finger at someone else and blame them. This is just me. You just check it out for yourself. But for me, I've yet to find that when I was busy pointing the finger at what they were doing to me or how they weren't doing it right or what they needed to do differently, that when I really followed that finger inward to my own belief system, that I did not find some correlation with what they were doing and what I was doing, usually in that very moment, either with them or myself. So you see, the world really is a mirror. But I say to people, don't take my word for this. Check it out for yourself.
No, and I absolutely agree. I guess the question, maybe let me refine the question. So let's say something, and that's all great because maybe someone else needed to hear it exactly in that way. Let's take a situation where the family, whatever it may be, there's an issue and it breaks the family, whatever, really, or breaks the marriage or breaks the relationship. And the person who decides to take the observer position and recognizes the gift and the lesson and the mirror in it and does the work and elevates themselves, if you will, or expands themselves or creates more awareness and doesn't necessarily feel like blame, but now there's a disconnect. And so then there's that curiosity of, okay, well, I don't have blame for you and I'm just sad that we don't have a relationship anymore. That's what I'm trying to cross. Not saying that my unhappiness is your fault. Because I can be happy, period. But that idea of family or that, and maybe that's just a story, but I would think that our culture really talks about, and it's a chakra, right? It's the first chakra, root chakra idea of community and our tribe. So it's that bridging that gap is there any not responsibility, because that's a rescuer conversation for sure. Just, I guess, once you can stand back and be the observer and take the contrast to the level of which you've asked for it to teach you. I mean, I know I've been doing it with several things in my life, and I appreciate and know exactly what benefits have come from these different contrasts. But then as I look back on the past as what's happened and look forward to the future and just wonder, will those relationships ever come back, or will they ever transform into even a better place? What would you say to that?
There's two responses to that on two different levels. And first of all, for me personally, the approach I've taken with our clan, we have 7 children between us, and I have 2 siblings, and he has a sister, and so we have lots of extended family, and some of which there were real gaps in my relating with them and their relating with me. A lot of old pain and trauma, again, growing up in a highly dysfunctional family and having all the residue and the aftermath of that. I recognized that I was what we call in metaphysics, that it was about cleansing the bloodline, and that I was the one who had been tapped in my family to do that. And what that means is that it was, how do I know it was me? Because I was the first one who in the family who began to really awaken to tools of consciousness. And the route I chose for my family was to refine my consciousness to the place where I could hold love for them from wherever I am or wherever they are. And there was an alienation for some years between one of my daughters and myself. It goes all the way back to my drug years when she was a little girl, and all the hurt and the betrayal she felt then, that she had a very difficult time giving up. And so there was a lot of distance and a lot of anger that we had for one another for various reasons, but mostly for me it was a lot of guilt, and that I covered with anger. For her it was just anger and hurt, and feeling abandoned and rejected. And so that went on for years, where there was just so much bitterness and vitriol between us. And I remember, and I tried all sorts of approaches, with her, including just distance, and all of that. But, I remember the time I said to her, sweetie, I understand that there is space between us and distance between us, and that there's a lot of old hurt there. And I get it, and I respect your right to sit with it as long as you need to, because I trust your process. And all I want to know from you is just to figure out what distance do you need me, so that you can feel safe and free to have your process without feeling like I'm barging in or invading your space, and I will just back up to there and love you from there. And that became my whole approach with her. So I let her decide for me, kind of decide for us where the boundary needed to be. And then I just loved her from there. Which meant, what did that mean? That meant not talking about her to her siblings. It meant not furthering story happiness between us. It meant reinforcing and holding a vision of her in my mind of what I believed was possible between us. And of always playing that part of that vision, that I held in that vision as my part in our relationship, whether or not she was able to meet me there. And after some years of that, and I will tell you, it took some years, and it's really only been in the last 3 years that our relationship, she's now in her mid-40s, that our relationship has turned that curve where she has embraced me and allowed me to love her again, to love her freely and openly and at close range. And what a beautiful gift to herself, to give herself that love. So sometimes what we must do, when we understand that love is the most potent force there is, it conquers everything. That is not just platitudes. That's reality. Love is a potent force, and everyone wants it. Everyone wants to be loved. I don't care what defenses they may put up to block it. They want to be loved. But when they feel the sting of our judgment, when they feel that they're not acceptable to us, and that we, especially if it feels to them like we are coming from some self-righteous place of having figured it all out, now we've left them behind and blah, blah, blah. If there's any of that, they don't feel love, and that creates that. When I can accept whatever love they have to offer in whatever form, and that was one of the big healings for me with my dad, was I began that he did what he did because he believed the stories he believed about himself, about life, and it had nothing to do with me. And that he struck out at me out of his own story about himself. What did that have to do with me? And as I got older, I began to just appreciate the ways he could love me. And it was hard to see in the beginning. But then it became, he would do it in little funny ways, like give me a hard time about who I was seeing. That was his way of cared, kind of thing. It was to begin to actually accept as loving the energy behind the act, even though the act itself is awkward and blundering because they don't really know how to show love. So there's that piece. And then there's another piece too, and that is that if I have a family member who is physically dangerous to themselves or me, then it is not kind for me or them to stick around and allow them to use me as a way to prove what it is their unhappy story is about themselves and the world. So in that case, that would be a time when I would want to give space and distance. Out of love. It's because I love you that I'm not willing to stick around, and because I know that it would be unloving for me to stick around, for you to do with me or to yourself what you do when you hurt me, really is what it is. I don't want to participate in that, and so I'm giving you space. And so it's that. So any of those can be true.
Thank you. I've heard cleansing the bloodline more than once. Let's just say that. It's been told to me a couple times. So I appreciate that. And I definitely also can relate to that in a law of attraction sense, that there's not really any going backwards. It's always moving to a higher frequency, and definitely accepting where everyone is the best you can do. to and allowing them and loving them from that place. So I just wondered, with the work that you do and with the victim triangle, sort of applying that very specifically to this. So thank you for that explanation, both parts of that. Now, I want you to let us know how we can stop reacting out of our core beliefs and give us a few ways that we can start to change that, as well as how we can get more information from you and work with you and learn from you. Okay, Lynne, how can we stop reacting out of these core triggering beliefs or core ideas about who we are in the world and all of the interpretations that come along with that?
They've discovered in neuroscience that nothing exists until it's observed. So interesting. It's like that old cone that says, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, is there a sound? Does a tree make a sound? Is there? And this would suggest, this finding in neuroscience, because everything is made of energy, and energy has two forms. It's either state or wave. Either particle or wave. And wave is its unseen form, where it's pure energy, and moving is energy, and it disappears. It's not visible. And then the particle is when that form, that very energy, takes on a shape, takes on a density, takes on form. And so but energy is energy, whichever form it's in. It's just that it shows up and disappears upon observation. And what observation is the ability to hold the focus on, to simply watch. Because then and that's what we're asked to do, to move off the triangle. We become watchers. We become observers. We become that which stands out and becomes the lens holder. It's like if you imagine the observer as being an actual lens through which and imagine it like sunlight coming through a glass, like coming through a magnifying glass and shining on something. And of course it produces heat, and it'll actually start a fire that if the sun is bright enough through that magnetic glass, the looking glass, and focused on a set of twigs, or it will start a fire. It will change it. It will change the form of that which it's directed to. And that principle is the very principle that applies esoterically to our mental life, to our thought life. So when we find ourselves on the victim triangle, we want to move off of that downward facing triangle and move to the upper facing triangle, which is the reminder, the memory of who we really are. It's the trinity of aspects that make up our essence. And we do that through the observer consciousness. We do that by stepping back from the situation, and we have to put down judgment. We have to put down the guns, because otherwise we're not observing, we are reacting. And as long as we're reacting, we are feeding that which we're reacting to. We're making it bigger. The law is whatever I focus on gets bigger. So what we want to do with our beliefs is step back, hold the lens for source to shed its light, observation on that which we are seeing in need of a higher frequency and need of transformation. And what happens is the light of that energy alone transforms it, changes it into something else. Now that sounds magical, and it is. There are tools. And mostly it's mental perceptions. It's asking ourselves questions, observer questions. In this work, we follow the questions instead of the answers. I'm much more interested, because answers are dead ends. And when we have an answer, our brain stops growing. It's called the neuroplasticity of the brain that allows the brain to actually expand and take in new information and grow. But when we think we know something, the pattern, the neural loops stops right there, and there's no more expansion of the brain. It's a dead end. Now we've figured it out. We know there's no more growth in that area possible. So in this work, what we do is we're not interested in finding the answers. We're interested in asking the questions that will take us deeper into the unwinding of an unhappy, untrue story that we have bought into at a very deep level, very early in life, even inherited, and stand back and look at it and ask ourselves questions like the reality formula in reverse. We ask, well, so what am I seeing? What are the effects of my belief systems in my life? how do people treat me? What am I reacting to? And when I react, what am I feeling? And when I feel that, how am I acting? How do I act when I feel that? And what do I believe behind it? And if I didn't believe that, and then we begin to explore other possibilities. Now we've looked at what we are believing. We want to introduce the possibility of something different, which is saying to the brain, I can choose to see this. And however I see it is what I will prove is true. So why wouldn't I choose to see this in a way that brings me more peace? And so that's how we begin to move off the triangle. And it's a process. But it can also happen very quickly. We see changes immediately with this work. As soon as we begin to practice just recognizing ourselves on the triangle, we begin to notice shifts.
And so when people want to get in touch with you for either session to work with you on this, or to get your book or your app, or to read more about it, where can they find you?
LynneForrest.com, LYNNEFORREST.com is my website. Go to my blog page there, learn about this new phone app that we just put out, downloading to build new neural pathways, N-E-U-R-A, neural pathways to peace. And it's talked about on my blog. So when you go to my webpage, click on that, read The Faces of Victim, the article. I have a book out that's available on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles. And sign up for the weekly downloads, messages that come every week to your address once you sign up, as an opportunity to continue to get tips and guidelines for moving out of victim consciousness. And all that's free of charge.
Excellent. Lynne, thank you so much for all 3 shows and for making time to help educate the world, inspire them, give them opportunity to see another way of thriving in their life and taking all those challenges and transforming them into peace. So thank you so much.
And thank you, JJ, for the work you do in the world and all that you put out there and give, and by modeling it through your own life.